Oh, I don't know. I mean, it could have come off maybe a couple cemetery tombstones. Maybe the phone book.
Bob Dylan was always seen as the quiet prophet of American music, the mysterious legend with a Nobel Prize and a mind full of poetry. But now, at 83, that calm image has been completely shattered by a confession nobody could have imagined. He exposed a secret list, 7 artists he couldn't stand. The names shook the entire music industry to its core. These weren't random musicians. They were people who once called him a friend, a hero, even an inspiration. In public, they praised him like royalty, but behind closed doors, they were erased from his life completely. And once you hear the reasons why these relationships fell apart, you'll see why some of them swore never to share a stage with him again. Now let's dive right into this shocking story. At the very top of Dylan's most hated list, Paul McCartney. Yes, that Paul McCartney, the Beatle everyone adores, the man people thought Dylan respected without question. But apparently, there was way more tension under the surface than anyone ever realized. Their fallout traces all the way back to 1987, before social media, before public feuds were entertainment. McCartney was giving a casual interview, talking about melody, pop structure, and how music was evolving. Then the interviewer brought up Dylan's latest work, those deep, experimental songs that were confusing some fans. Paul chuckled, gave a small shrug, and said, "Bob isn't writing songs people can remember anymore." It sounded harmless, maybe even teasing. But to Dylan, that line hit hard. It wasn't just a light jab, it felt like a public insult. People forget that in the mid-'80s, Dylan wasn't the unshakable legend he is now. He was drained, fighting to find his voice again after years of spiritual struggle. He was reinventing himself, trying to make sense of who he was beyond the myth. So when one of the world's biggest icons hinted that his new music had lost its spark, it wasn't just criticism, it was humiliation. That single comment turned quiet respect into a silent war, and Dylan never looked at McCartney the same way again. A close friend once remembered Dylan mumbling under his breath, "He wanted to be Lennon. He never understood me." It wasn't arrogance. It was Dylan drawing a line in the sand. That quiet statement said it all. The tension didn't explode in public. It died slowly in silence. Plans for a joint mini-tour suddenly vanished, private meetings got canceled overnight, and McCartney was left completely confused about what went wrong. But those close to Dylan, they knew exactly what caused that icy wall between them. Fans hoped for a reunion, maybe one legendary photo of them side by side again, but insiders swear it never happened. Lennon had been the Beatle Dylan truly respected, sharp, biting, unpredictable. Paul was the total opposite, polished, charming, and loved by everyone. To Dylan, that perfect image didn't feel real. That smooth charm, it felt fake, like a mask, and once Dylan saw it that way, there was no turning back. Then comes the second name on Dylan's secret hate list, Eric Clapton, the guitar god himself. The craziest part? Dylan once admired Clapton, praised him in interviews, called him one of the best. But all that admiration flipped in an instant. One night, one sentence, and it was over. It happened in late 1978 inside a cramped rehearsal room in West Hollywood. A few musicians were chilling after a long jam session, everyone tired but still buzzing. Clapton was relaxed, joking around, maybe a bit too confident that night. And then he said it, a sentence that cut through the room like glass. "Dylan's losing his. Someone's got to step in." The room went dead silent. One person who was there said later, "He didn't say it angry. He said it like it was just a fact, and that made it worse." Within 24 hours, the words made their way back to Dylan. Because in the music world, nothing stays quiet for long. When Dylan heard it, he didn't rage or throw shade. He just sat back, nodded slowly, and said one line that people still quote to this day. "Funny how people change when they think they're catching up." That wasn't about Clapton's guitar skills. It was about his ego. The fallout came instantly. A recording session Dylan and Clapton had planned to test out disappeared from the schedule without warning. Calls went unanswered, messages left hanging. Clapton tried asking around to see what went wrong, and finally, one studio engineer told him the cold truth. "Whatever you said the other night, Bob heard it." Clapton once tried to patch things up during a festival in 1981. He spotted Dylan backstage, took a deep breath, and walked toward him with his hand raised halfway, ready to talk things out. But the moment Dylan saw him, his expression hardened. He clenched his jaw, turned his back, and walked the other way without saying a single word. Clapton froze in disbelief. That's when it hit him. This wasn't some silly misunderstanding. This was permanent. Then came the next name on Dylan's list, Joan Baez, the folk queen who broke his trust. Fans still whisper about what really tore them apart. How did two of the most powerful voices in folk music, two people who once changed the world together, end up not speaking for decades? The truth isn't just musical, it's deeply personal. Their rift started with one moment Joan thought was harmless. It was the mid-1960s. Chaos, protests, reinvention everywhere. Dylan was shifting his sound, experimenting, stepping away from the acoustic purity that made him a folk icon. In an interview, Joan said he was turning away from the people who need him. To the world, it sounded like an artistic comment, but to Dylan, it felt like betrayal, a public jab from the one person who truly understood his private doubts. The real break came during Dylan's 1965 UK tour. Joan expected to perform with him, just like old times. They had shared stages, inspired movements, and created an entire era together. But when she arrived, the vibe was ice cold. His team wouldn't schedule her, and Dylan wouldn't confirm a duet. According to one crew member, Joan finally confronted him in a narrow hallway and asked, "Are you really shutting me out?" Dylan's response was brutal. He looked her in the eye and said, cold as stone, "This isn't your show." That single sentence crushed her. It wasn't just rejection. It was humiliation in front of the same world that once saw them as equals. A few nights later, Joan realized what was really happening. Dylan wasn't just evolving his music, he was cutting her out of his life completely. Years later, she admitted, "He didn't owe me anything, except honesty." But Dylan never gave her that. No explanation, no apology, nothing. And that silence hurt more than any insult could. So Joan took her heartbreak to the press. She started talking in interviews about Dylan losing his way, about how he'd abandoned the causes that once fueled his art. She didn't attack his talent. She went for something deeper, his integrity. And that was the one thing Dylan protected more fiercely than his fame. People close to him said he felt exposed, like his soul had been dragged into the spotlight. To Dylan, it wasn't just criticism. It was betrayal, because the woman who knew his fears best had turned them into ammunition. Dylan never raised his voice about it, not once. He didn't rant, he didn't argue, he just cut her off. From that point on, the idea of working with Joan Baez again was dead. Any manager who even hinted at a reunion was shut down instantly. Years later, Dylan said, "She used my doubts to shame me." And that wound never really healed. Their silence stretched for more than 40 years. Even when they reunited for the legendary 1975 Rolling Thunder review, the air between them was thick with tension. Cameras caught them smiling, but those smiles were paper thin, polite, not real. They sang together, sure, but you could see it in their eyes. The trust was gone. Then came the next name on Dylan's secret hate list, Lou Reed, the punk poet, the rebel voice of the underground, and the man who dared to mock Dylan's very soul. Reed landed himself in the 4th spot the moment he opened his mouth in 1974, and from that day, Dylan never forgave him. It all started during a casual interview while Reed was promoting a Velvet Underground project. A journalist asked him what he thought about Bob Dylan's influence on songwriting. Reed didn't hesitate. He fired off a line that still echoes like a punch. "Dylan never meant anything to me." Then, as if that wasn't enough, he twisted the knife deeper, saying, "His lyrics are smoke and mirrors." People who heard the full interview said Reed wasn't joking or being dramatic. He wasn't even angry. He said it flat, cool, and emotionless. The same tone he used when talking about guitar amps or distortion pedals. And somehow, that made it sting even worse. It didn't sound like rivalry. It sounded like dismissal. When word reached Dylan, he didn't explode or fire back in the press. He just gave one cold reaction. A member of his 1970s tour crew remembered Dylan hearing the quote, pausing for a second, then saying quietly, "Let him talk. Silence. We'll answer him." That line became the feud itself. From then on, Lou Reed didn't exist in Dylan's world. No mentions, no acknowledgments, nothing. If someone in the studio dared to bring up Reed's name, Dylan would instantly change the subject, like flicking ashes off a cigarette and moving on without a second thought. That was Dylan's revenge. Not rage, not gossip, just pure, icy silence. The tension didn't fade. It grew quietly, spreading like smoke behind the scenes. Nearly a decade later, in the early 90s, Dylan sat down for a Rolling Stone interview. Everything was calm until the journalist casually dropped Lou Reed's name into the conversation. Dylan looked up, gave a sly smirk, and said one word: "Who?" It wasn't sarcasm. It wasn't humor. It was pure, deliberate erasure. That kind of dismissal hits harder than any insult. It's the kind of silence artists dread. When Reed heard about Dylan's remark, he just rolled his eyes and said, "Of course he said that." But those close to him said it cut deeper than he'd ever admit. The man who had built a career on indifference had just been outdone by the master of cold detachment himself. And here's the twist hardly anyone knows. Reed once confided to a close friend, "Dylan was too insecure to take me, honestly." Word of that reached Dylan not long after, and that was it. The door slammed shut forever. Whatever chance there was for mutual respect, gone for good. Then came the fifth name on Dylan's secret hate list, Leonard Cohen, the poet saint of songwriting, the man Dylan once admired, then quietly grew to resent. And this feud stings the most because it started not from competition or mockery, but from pure admiration. Dylan genuinely loved Cohen's work. He talked about it with tenderness, calling him one of the greatest lyricists alive. He praised Cohen publicly, describing his songs as the highest level of songwriting. For Dylan, that kind of praise was rare, almost sacred, which is exactly why what came next hit him so hard. It happened in the early 1970s. Cohen was being interviewed in Paris when a reporter asked what he thought about Dylan's early writing. Cohen smiled politely, paused for a second, and said, "His early songs were a bit adolescent compared to the poets I admire." He meant it academically, not cruelly, not competitively, but that didn't matter. That one word, adolescent, landed like a slap. To anyone else, it would have been a passing comment. But to Dylan, who had once called Cohen a genius, it felt like betrayal. People close to Dylan said he reread that quote over and over, like he couldn't believe Cohen had actually said it. This wasn't some rock star rival or punk provocateur. This was Leonard Cohen, the one songwriter Dylan secretly feared, maybe even envied. "You were never as good as you thought." Those were the words that haunted Dylan long after his fallout with Leonard Cohen. Years later, during a random meeting in New York, Cohen tried to make small talk, maybe to smooth things over. But Dylan stayed calm, cold, unreadable. Cohen later told a friend, "Bob speaks in riddles." But insiders say there was no mystery at all. Dylan just didn't want to reopen that door. He couldn't bring himself to trust someone who had once cut him deeper than any critic ever could. Their artistic rivalry never really faded. It evolved quietly into something heavier. When Cohen released Hallelujah, Dylan praised it in interviews, even performed it live in his own concerts. But behind the scenes, total silence. No calls, no letters, no private words of respect, nothing. Later, Cohen tried again. He publicly complimented Dylan, saying he admired the simplicity of the heart in Dylan's songwriting. But Dylan ignored it completely. No response, not even a nod. For most people, that coldness seemed strange. But for those who really knew Dylan, it made perfect sense. The wound from that old interview, the adolescent comment, had never healed. And in Dylan's world, betrayal didn't get second chances. So, what do you think about all this? Which name on Dylan's secret list shocked you the most? And which feud do you believe should have been settled before time ran out? Drop your thoughts down below. I want to hear your take. And hey, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss another wild, untold story from behind the scenes of music's biggest legends. See you in the next video.